This is Sean. Welcome back to the American Soccer Coach. In this video, I'm going to talk about the success of Red Bull Salzburg, a club that's been doing extremely well the last 5 to 7 years. I'm really going to break down, I'm kind of going to do this pretty extensively, why they've had so much success. I believe it's over the last 6 transfer windows, and we're not including the most recent one where Haaland left for Dortmund and Minamino left for Liverpool. I believe it was the last 5 or 6 transfer windows. They have gained about $260 million in the transfer window. So that's based off the player sales, and then also, obviously they brought some players in, but then the player sales, I mean, if you combine those two things, you're looking at about $260 million total, despite the players that they brought in. So anyway, we're gonna go over an extensive research of what has made this club so successful. The first thing we have to look at is, obviously, they are Red Bull Salzburg, so they're part of the Red Bull group. So you have Red Bull Leipzig in Germany, you have the New York Red Bulls in MLS, you have Bragantino in Brazil, and then they also have affiliate partnerships with clubs, one club in Ghana, and then also Real Bamako in Mali. Now, these are important because they have brought players in from these affiliate partnership groups, such as Real Bamako. Players like Amadou Haidara, who now is at Leipzig, players like Diadi Semaseku, who is now at who is now also in the Bundesliga as well. So that partnership has been really important for them to get players from West Africa. The most recent example is Sekou Kota, who is a player as well from Mali, who is kind of probably going to be the next number 9 that we see come out at Salzburg at a very high level, a younger player. The other thing is that they recruit extremely well. Their scouting team at Red Bull Salzburg is fantastic. And one of the places that they've gone to, they go to a lot of countries that a lot of people do not scout really well. But one of the countries that they've scouted really well, that people know well, is France. They brought in Naby Keita, who is from Guinea, but he played in France for very cheap. They brought in Sadio Mane, who played, obviously, is from Senegal, but they brought him in from France also for very cheap before selling him to Southampton. As well as the scouting, I mean, they scouted France very well, like a lot of teams have, but they've also scouted in areas where you wouldn't expect. Their current best young player, I'm going to totally butcher the name, Dominik Szoboszlai, the Hungarian, is a great example of probably the next player that's going to be on the move from Salzburg to a bigger league. They scouted him from Hungary. You have a couple players that they brought in, like Minamino from Japan. You have Chan, who's from South Korea. You have players from Croatia and Bosnia. So they have scouted areas, and then obviously, like I said, with Ghana and Mali, specifically Mali, where you do not see as many clubs scouting this area well. So that is another reason for their success. Now, what they've also done an extremely good job of is they have a program called FC Liefering. They have a partnership with this club, FC Liefering, who play in the 2nd division of Austria. And the partnership, a lot of these 16 to 19-year-old players that are in the Red Bull Salzburg Academy will end up playing on loan at FC Liefering. So if you look right now, there are currently 12 players in the Red Bull Salzburg first team that played at FC Liefering. So these players are getting professional minutes in the 2nd division of Austria at 16, 17, 18, 19 years old. And then usually what will happen is once they grow out at the 2nd division, they get too good for it, Red Bull Salzburg will usually make they have a couple choices. One is they sell the player. They probably don't think the player is going to be good enough and they sell them. The second is they put the player on loan, and that is either usually to a team in a different country or to a team in the Austrian Bundesliga. The third option is the player has made the transition from FC Liefering and is now ready to play in the first team of Red Bull Salzburg. That's the ideal option. So usually it's either they go from Red Bull Salzburg or FC Liefering to Red Bull Salzburg, or they use Liefering, go on loan, and then eventually after their loan, they either get sold or from their loan, they go to the first team of Red Bull Salzburg. That's usually been the path to professional for the players there. Now, that is really important because what we have to understand that Red Bull Salzburg have done a really good job with is the Austrian Bundesliga historically, especially the last 5 or 6 years, has not been that competitive. Salzburg have dominated. Because they've been dominating, they are able to play young players on the first team against teams that are in the bottom half. And obviously, if you play 6 or 7 guys that are with those players that are very experienced and very talented, these 17, 18, 19-year-old players can play at a high level without having all the pressure on them, and they're usually going to still win the game. You can't necessarily do that with young players in La Liga or in the Bundesliga or in Serie A or in England, because there's a lot of pressure to win, and you're not, the talent gap might not be as large. Or else you would have, 18 to 20-year-olds playing every single week, but you don't see it. So they have really done a good job using that and making sure that they're able to get these players minutes at a young age. Because, I mean, if a player has 50 appearances with the first team at 19 years old, obviously, if they're playing really well, their transfer value is going to go up. Maybe they've made an international debut. Maybe they've made a Champions League appearance. Their value is going to consistently just get larger and larger. And finally, the other thing is, regardless of who the coach has been at Salzburg the last 5 or 6 years, they have played a very similar style. And that's not just at the first team level, but it's also at the youth level, where very high pressure, they love to counterattack. They keep the ball pretty good on the ground, but they play very vertical. And that, again, that starts at the youth level. That's, it goes up to Liefering, and then it eventually goes into the first team. And that's regardless of who the coach is. So the players are playing the same formations. They know exactly what the first team coaches want, because that's what they develop in the academy. So these are a lot of the reasons that Salzburg have had success. If there is a final one, Red Bull Salzburg really do not spend a lot of money bringing in players, and that is because they do such a good job scouting. That is because they buy players young. It's shocking to see Salzburg spend more than $5 million on a player. And the reason for this is they can get a player at $4 million, get him first team appearances that he might not get in a different league, and then eventually sell him on for 20 or 25 million. And that is what has made this so successful. And obviously they're very fun to watch because so many young players, a fun style of play. It's been a very good story to watch. Thank you guys for tuning in. Let me know what you guys think about the video, what you think about the Salzburg team. As always, take care.